Hey there! So today we're going to do a digital hybrid collage. So I had this idea for a collage for some time using my figurative work, the work that I do on my computer, and then collaging on top of that. So I actually envisioned this on canvas, and I have ordered one and it's coming sometime next week. But in the meantime, I was too anxious to give this a try. So today that's what we're going to do. I printed this out on my large format. It's like a 13 by 19 printer, and it's a 12 by 12. So this is what I call a study. Okay? I try out my ideas small before I get too crazy and spend a lot of time on something large. The canvas that's coming is 24 by 36 because I know for sure that this was gonna work. And today I got the proof. So spend the day in the studio with me. Let's get started. Okay, so this is my printout. I printed on Epson high quality matte paper. Matte photo paper. I choose matte because the glossy is really not meant for any kind of mixed media. And so I always trim off two sides so I can sort of line up with my board. And then I also went through some papers and tried to find, some different colors that I might want to use. And I really don't have a plan. I just wanted to stick with the blues, turquoise, blue, and also maybe some yellows and greens. So I wasn't really sure. I'm just kind of randomly went through and picked out a bunch of papers. Some of these I used and some of them I didn't. If you watched my video on the Create collage that I did, you'll notice that my inkjet smeared. So I bought this matte finish spray and I sprayed that paper before I attempted this. And I gessoed a board, just lightly gessoed, and I taped off the edges to keep the wood color on the side. And I waited for that board to dry. So now I'm applying some gel medium to the entire board. I'm using a sponge brush and we're trying to get it pretty even all the way to the edges. So the reason why I use a sponge brush is I don't want any of my other brushes to get ruined. And I do find that the flatness of the edge of the foam brush makes it a little bit easier to get an even coat. And then I use a catalyst wedge to really, push out all the bubbles, as many as I can, really get it smooth along the edges. If I need to, I just add a little bit more gel medium because, if you have to work kind of fast, when you're putting a light coat, it sometimes, dries faster than, especially along the edges. I don't know why that is, but it definitely dries quickly along the edges. So I'm regretting that I painted that area green already. I mean, not total regret, but anyway, I decided that I'm going to cut that part out and lift it off before I let this dry. But I'm putting a coat of gel medium over the entire thing. Now, because I used that matte spray, this is not bleeding like the other one was. It's definitely that ink is staying flat and it's not smearing at all. So I was very happy with that. And I always do a coat over the top and then use the catalyst wedge a little bit more to even out the bubbles. Now, even though I still have bubbles, when it completely dries, the bubbles are gone. So as you can see, I removed that sort of dark turquoise color and I'm going to paint it with teal. And sorry, my head is in the way. Oh my goodness. So one of the reasons why I did this is I didn't want paper on top of paper. I was afraid that archivally it might not, work too well. I always worry about paper anyway for archival reasons. And when you're layering, a full sheet of paper underneath, and, multiple pieces on top, I don't know. I was worried about that. I think, the paint is a little bit better. I can show some of it through. This is more in keeping with the papers that I selected. And so, and probably on my computer, this was the color that I was seeing, but it's not what printed. So sometimes we have to make changes, but I'm happy with this change. So now that is completely dry, I'm ready to start collaging. So I cut this shape specifically for right under that arm. And I think this particular sheet was copy paper. No, it was rice paper. I could tell by the underside. So most of the papers actually that I'm using here are rice papers, but there are a couple that are copy paper. So to get a little bit more precise, I decide that I'm going to make a tracing paper that has the exact curve. And that way I can cut along that line and get exactly the kind of shape that I need. But then I'm still tearing the top part. So I'm doing a combination of precision cutting and tearing. And of course, using my catalyst wedge whenever possible to really get it down there smooth. And I'm letting the excess just hang off the edge. We will trim that all after everything is dry. So I'm still making decisions. I really loved this paper and wanted to try to use it, but I don't think it ever made it in there. And so I'm also going for variations of this sort of turquoise, phthalo blue, in some cases where it mixed a little bit with the with yellow and gave me a variation of that color. And these were papers from various sessions. I did not make any specific papers for this particular collage. Sometimes I do that. In this case, I did not. And I'm adhering it to the board as I go along. Sometimes I just lay it out and then I wait until the end to glue it, but for some reason I was making definite decisions like on the spot with this particular one. Sometimes I'm very wishy-washy. I have no idea what I'm doing. I keep changing my mind. But for some reason, this one, I knew what I wanted to do, like on the spot, and cut the piece and went for it. Maybe it was because I had to cut these specific shapes. Sometimes I think it's also depends on the day. You know, sometimes you feel more creative or you just feel more sure of yourself that particular day. And it could be that I was just feeling really good. I was very excited about this project, and maybe I was just also thinking of this as a study, and so I wasn't too concerned. So I don't know what I'm going to do when I have to do a larger piece and get it all on camera. I definitely need a better shooting system, I think. Now that I'm in the new space, I'm making changes to how I'm shooting these videos. I definitely got some better light. And we'll see what I manage to come up with next. We shall see. I have a better camera, but I have not found a way to dangle it over my desk yet. But that will have a lens that will zoom in and zoom out and allow me to get a little bit more bigger pieces into the camera frame. Okay, so I definitely want to use this piece, and I love that little spot of yellow, so I wanted to make sure that I got that in there. Okay, so my piece wasn't exactly long enough, but see how I have that little bit of teal showing through? It's okay. But I end up, I think, covering that anyway. But it would be fine if I left it alone. Okay, so somehow my camera didn't record a couple of pieces, so anyway, I decided to cover that area with that little piece there. And these sort of burgundy colored pieces, I'll explain later where I came up with this idea, but I definitely felt like this piece needed to introduce another color, something that was a little bit unexpected. And interestingly enough, there was this piece laying around, I'll show you later, and it just was perfect. So anyway, on this yellow bathing suit with the pattern, I really definitely wanted to cover up that pattern, but at the same time, those sort of greenish yellow papers that I had were a little bit too similar. I wanted to still keep that bright yellow. So I found this transparent paper that has these white fibers in it. And it covers up enough of the pattern, but allows some of the pattern to show through, darkens the yellow a little bit, and it was just perfect. It is hard to tear. It's challenging when you get into where the fibers are. But oh my God, this was the perfect thing. Thank God that I had purchased this little sample pack, and I had just enough in there to work on this swimsuit area. Turned out just perfect. I have to go buy more of that paper for sure. I was going to use the white. I have some that is transparent white with the white fibers, but the yellow was perfect because it intensified that yellow a little bit. Okay, so then I had this little piece laying around on my desk. God, I just wanted to introduce that additional pop of color that had all of the colors in it that I'm using. I trimmed off the edge just a little bit to fit right there. And it was just what I needed. And it was on tissue paper, black dotted tissue paper. So earlier in the process, I damaged that little corner. Some of that gray lifted off because the board was not completely dry when I decided to trim the edges. So I'm mixing up a little bit of gray paint, and I'm just touching it up so that it's not noticeable. It's just two little shades of gray, and I'm touching up the black line as well. Okay, so this is the mask that was laying around on my desk, and I noticed that those colors were just perfect for this. There's a little bit of gold, a little bit of alizarin crimson. It did have a little bit more red, but I found a paper that probably I was printing when I got that paint on that mask. So I cut those shapes out of that paper, and that's how that all happened. So you see that little bit of gray that's on my board? That was from that corner. So I'm waiting for this to fully dry so that I don't end up tearing any of this precious paper. We really, really want to make sure that it's no longer cool to the touch, which kind of is an indication that it's still a little bit wet underneath, and fully, fully, fully dry. And then I will turn it over and trim the edges. So let's talk about this spray that I purchased to make sure that this type didn't smear, because that's all type in there in her body. This is called Aleene's, I think, and it's a matte finish acrylic sealer. And I sprayed the paper before I mounted it. That way, when I used the catalyst wedge, I wasn't going to be smearing any ink around. So this would probably work with any other kinds of, like if you do some mixed media work that is maybe using some water soluble stuff, you want to make sure you protect it before you try to, mount it to a board or something. Definitely seal it. Okay, so now I think we're ready to trim it. And so I always angle my blade in a little bit. And it's a fresh blade, but sometimes I still have to go over it more than once because I have multiple layers there. Very happy with this. I wish you could see, like, I think the lights are changing the color slightly, but it's pretty close. So I'm super happy with this. It came out really nice. And this is a little bit of a close-up. It dried really flat. I was really worried because when I was laying down the figurative part of it, the body, I was getting a lot of bubbles right around that bikini top area. And I was so worried that it wasn't going to dry flat, but it did. I don't know why I always worry about these things. It always works out in the end. But anyway, I'm super, super happy with the way the entire thing came out, the look. I think once we have the finish on it, I'm going to do a nice glossy finish. But first I have to have it photographed. That's a good trick. Don't photograph your work after you put the finish on it. It's going to be really hard to get away any glare. So I always have it photographed first, then put the glossy finish on it. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please come again. Don't forget to create, inspire, and share, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.